So there needs to be a level of trust across the group that, you don't know how a decision gets made, but you trust that your partner in a different part of the organization made the right decision on behalf of our team. And therein, it's a decision that we're all going to live with, and we don't have to ask why every time a decision gets made.
Welcome to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the seven figure journey. My name's David Gilliland, one of your hosts. Today, we're privileged to have John Mizzi with us with Vero. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
And though you're typically out of the New York area, and you today are calling in from, was it Michigan?
Yes, Metro Detroit, my old romping grounds. I'm back home for the holiday.
Well, thanks for joining us, taking a little time out of meal preparation to talk
Mhm.
with our group. Uh, John, you've been playing in, I mean, you've created a solution, a great solution in this space of asset financing and how you manage that whole process, all the back end stuff for these finance companies. Uh, Tell me just a little bit, how'd you get into this in the first place?
Yeah. Well, pardon my language, but as many folks say, it was a bit of an ass backwards journey. We stumbled into it. I have spent my career working in financial services. Initially, worked for Bank of America. I spent a few years in the alternative investment space, and then started working in the fintech world about a decade ago. We had a client engagement with a finance company that was doing a specialized type of asset financing called wholesale or floor plan lending. And it really opened my eyes up to an industry that had been generally underinvested in from a technology standpoint. I had a lot of ideas around some relatively basic technology solutions that could really streamline processes, allow folks to the regardless of industry. I think the age old problem is when a company's big enough, they can just throw human bodies at bottlenecks or operational challenges. And my view was, with the right technology systems, you could A, scale more efficiently, but B, allow your people to work on high value tasks and responsibilities rather than focus on the mundane back office administrative tasks. And so that's really where we focused our development efforts in terms of building our platform over the last 5 years.
Very cool. And is this a bootstrapped or a VC kind of backed?
Um, the founding teams definitely put some money in, but we are VC backed and have done most recently did a Series A in 2023.
Nice. Uh, Adds a new level of challenges and gives you some funding to do other things. So isn't it amazing how much of your time, instead of leading the business, is now just securing the fuel for growth, right?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, obviously, having the capitalization to invest in development is critical, especially with a piece of enterprise software.
Yeah.
Um, with that said, and then also I think going through the fundraising process, inevitably you get sharper as a founder, having to answer hard questions, understand how you're positioning the business relative to
Mhm.
legacy players, learning from smart investors who have seen different companies that have followed a similar archetype or journey. And so that's all very much positive. Now, inevitably, you have to spend a lot of time cultivating relationships, keeping investors happy, keeping people informed. And so we're very much focused rather than kind of the hyper growth companies of 2019 and 2020, focusing on how we can get to a point of sustainability where we can keep our existing investors happy, but we don't have to necessarily be in the market constantly looking for new investors for future rounds.
Nice. Nice. I like that. So you're already in the revenue. You've got clients you're caring for. And you guys have grown, a serious business here. Now you're merely looking at how do we expand this and how do we make the offering even tighter and all that sort of thing. And
Mhm.
that's what you're using your funding for. Um, at, as you have, I mean, you're a good sized business now for one who just got a Series A back in 23. What are some things you've learned that have helped you succeed since passing that, like million revenue mark?
Yeah. I think Well, I can talk a little bit about what we're navigating today, but I think the biggest we grew at one point from 8 people to about 22 people in the course of 12 months. And when it was 8 people, it was pretty easy to have everyone involved in every conversation, and it was great that everyone was wearing a lot of hats. It was necessary. And so going through that transformation where, for the first time in my life, I actually needed people to stay in their lane, or I wanted people, I needed roles to be a little bit more siloed because there was so much day to day stuff to get done that we couldn't have someone who was focused on account management being involved in risk conversations. We needed, from a governance standpoint, segregation of decision making between credit and sales, and product and biz dev. And so navigating the organizational change of having people, helping people understand why it was necessary to make these changes, and then make sure that stuff wasn't slipping through the cracks because we couldn't have a organization wide stand up meeting 3 or 4 days a week. um, was definitely a growth chapter that presented a unique set of challenges that we needed to solve for, and a lot of it was just communicating, over communicating, and making sure on a person by person level we were meeting people where they were at and helping them understand what they needed to do as their roles evolved or shifted. um, Today I think the challenge is we've prided ourselves on always being very close to our customers. We like to say we don't want you to think of us as a vendor, but rather an extension of your organization from a technology standpoint or operational standpoint. And so we want to maintain that level of service and relationships, but at the same time, as we're growing, that means we have to have um, an extra level of support and coordination to make sure we have a product roadmap, but we also have clients who want to deviate from that, and I want to support those deviations, frankly. um, but obviously that comes at a cost, and so it's kind of managing being the new guy on the block and people expecting for you to be the cost effective solution, but at the same time deliver a Cadillac level of service.
Challenging. I want to pick some of this apart that you talked about, and let's dive into the details. Talked about a need after you were crossing going 8 to 22 in a year's time. You cross that 10, 12, 14 mark, and it just doesn't work for everyone to be in the room all the time, right? It
Yeah.
just doesn't work. Um, and but it wasn't. I mean, you used a term that's often rather negative. You said I kind of needed these silos.
Mhm.
Uh, but let me understand this a little bit. So, are you saying you needed people to not talk with each other, or are you saying you needed people to, was it the issue of when you're wearing a lot of hats, you're not really mastering the one you're in, so it's not excelling like it needs to,
Mhm.
or what was the main thing? So I understand why.
A little bit of both. I mean, I think we were moving so fast at that time, and in fact, I've probably course corrected, but the pendulum swang far enough one direction where I actually remember distinctly having a conversation where I had to explain to one of our people, I'm like, look, your role is customer success. You don't need to understand how every decision gets made on the risk team. And me as the CEO, I will ask probing questions, and I'll make sure I have a level of understanding to at least be comfortable, but I don't need to understand how every decision gets made within our risk organization. They're making 100 decisions a day, and if I needed to be part of every one of those decisions, a I have leaders in our organization who would be undermined, and frankly it wouldn't be a good use of either of our time. So there needs to be a level of trust across the group that you don't know how a decision gets made, but you trust that your partner in a different part of the organization made the right decision on behalf of our team, and therein it's the decision that we're all going to live with, and we don't have to ask why every time a decision gets made.
and
um,
and in that, so I get that, and that's, I mean, that's very important, just the speed that you have to move, that we
mhm.
can't slow everything down so everybody feels good about everything happening, but instead that we can feel good trusting the team. um, but in that kind of growth we also run the risk of people pulling the company in different directions. So the handoffs don't work well anymore. Like right hand isn't talking with left hand, and they're actually doing very different things. How did you manage? Because you had to get them to become experts in their areas and trust the others in their lane to do well. How did you ensure we were all pulling the same direction still as a team? You mentioned, and that was the second piece I wanted to talk about, your over communicate. Talk
Yeah.
to me about what you needed to over communicate to keep everyone pulling the same direction.
Yeah. I mean, we we talked a lot. Well, we assigned objectives on a team by team basis. So at least folks within each team knew exactly what their overarching objective was as it relates to day to day decision making. We even implemented kind of a framework where it was like, is this $100 decision, $1,000 decision, or a $10,000 decision? If it's $100 decision, I want you to make that decision, and I don't ever want to know about it. If it's $1,000 decision, you can make that decision and tell me about it later. And if it's a $10,000 decision, then bring it up in our one-on-ones and we can figure out what the right decision to make is together and collaborate. So that kind of allowed us to figure out how to prioritize what decisions get discussed and what decisions just get made and move on. Um, and then, I think as a company, inevitably teams have competing objectives. Sales wants to close as many deals as possible. Our risk and product organization wants to deliver a superior product, which means we can't do everything at the same time. And so there was in when you have organizations that are have conflicting objectives in a way, um, then it justifies explaining and over explaining or letting them run, and frankly letting sales over promise or product get hung up on perfecting a feature, and then being able to explain to the other party why we found ourselves in a place where we're not moving fast enough from a product standpoint or we're not closing enough deals, um, and what the impact of that is. So there's no like, you know, we even struggle with QBOs, frankly, because I could close a deal next week and our objectives for the rest of the quarter are going to completely change. So we have overarching values and, team, call it like your modus operandi in terms of why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
but it's flexible enough where, we tell people what's coming down the pipe, what's closed, what we expect the impact to be on the business of things that have closed a month from now. I ask my people and I'm like, I need you guys to tell me once this, we expect these 5 things to happen in the next 4 weeks, 8 weeks. I need you guys to think through, how is this going to impact your day to day? Are you going to be stretched thin? What are the things that are going to need to be deprioritized? And those are the conversations I like to have in our one-on-ones or team meetings, because it allows us to start thinking a few, chess moves ahead in terms of what resources we need to put in place or how we need to adjust responsibilities to manage, whatever direction we're going. It's never a straight line, but instead of it being, high highs and low lows, we want to course correct. So it's more of a, up and to the right, but with expected, you know, albeit minimized volatility.
Yeah. Uh, okay. So pulling that out, you found one of the keys of growth was as you got to a certain size, everyone wearing all sorts of hats couldn't function anymore. You needed to get down in and tight and great in your lane. Um, but
Myself included.
you included, right? Yeah, getting out of people's business and let them do their thing. You know, that's one of the hardest parts, John, for many of us.
I mean, everyone, what was it, a month or two ago when this article about founder mode came out? I think that is silly. I mean, I recognize quickly that, my co-founder is head of a product and our COO. We have a lot of gray area where we both have opinions and need to weigh in. But when it comes to product, I mind my own business.
Yeah,
We've got, Isaac is head of product. Ram, our third co-founder, is our CTO. They are in the weeds and understand what needs to get done. Now, am I going to ask questions sometimes? Sure. But Do I need to be involved in weekly or monthly product meetings? No. I have complete trust in them to do what they need to do to, in the best interest of the business.
Yeah,
And so, that is just, I can sleep easier. I have a few less, things on my mind when I go to bed at night because I don't have to worry about looking after, that part of our business.
I love that. So so the three main points that we're pulling out of this: one, get clear about the lanes that people need to work in and be great in, and that the trust has got to be there across the organization.
Mhm.
Two, ensure that we're over communicating, not what you have to do today, but we're over communicating our modus operandi, our core values, the way we make decisions, because we're going to be adjusting and pivoting. And everyone has to be able to trust they would have based it on the same values or important priorities that I've got. Like we're seeing the same picture, right? Great. And then the last piece that we're looking at was this: then as the CEO, don't overreach, step back, trust other people in their lanes. Because if you're not, one, you're undermining them, you're breaking the trust that's needed in the growth in your team, so your business isn't going to grow. And two, you don't have time to do your job. Your job
Yeah.
is not those things. And if you haven't learned what your job is as the CEO, go learn it. Right? Like,
I mean, my thing that I try to focus on, and look, I'm not perfect. And frankly, I think I could even get a lot better at this. But rather than just jumping in with a prescribed solution, trying to ask an insightful question. And
yes.
maybe that's just asking a question to drive people towards the solution I have in mind, but allow them to get there on their own.
Yeah,
But typically it's, hey, I don't understand why we're doing this. Explain to me why your rationale here.
that's
And
right.
it's probably a little less blunt than that, but ultimately, I either then have my eyes open and just deepen the trust I have in that individual to do what they need to do, or I can ask a follow up probing question and recognize or identify that maybe we're not thinking about it the right way, and we need to course correct.
That's right. And that thinking is key, because solving the one problem today, fine. But changing the rationale and way of thinking just solved 100 problems into the future that they're going to be touching.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we're training. Uh, I, I kind of like to look at it as like the CEO's job, in fact, any leader's job, but let's go with CEO's job really is set the vision, build the team. And that was those questions you were asking, right? You were asking questions that align it to that overall vision. And then don't run out of cash. That's the CEOs, and that's why you've got to work with VCs at times, or ensure operations are delivering, having the metrics that they need to deliver to make sure that we have cash flow needed for continued growth, while all the while caring for our team. Just
Yeah.
that sense of care.
I mean,
um,
I think the caring piece is an X factor where if you don't do that, you're going to have turnover.
yeah.
You're going to invest a lot of time in finding good people and training good people, and then they're going to not be happy or enjoy, coming to work on every day. Um, I think the biggest challenge, we really prided ourselves around, taking care of our people, and we had to do our first layoff a few months
Wow.
back. Um, and it was just a function of, an evolution of how the business was going to be operating, unfortunately. But it felt very contradictory in terms of the level of care that we demonstrated.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately having to tell folks that they didn't have a job here anymore. Now, ultimately, it was for the greater good of the company, but that it's situations like that where you really have to revisit your values and understand how these decisions, fit in.
Yeah, and how we do it in a way that strengthens the values in the minds of everyone who remained and even those who left. Are we
Yeah,
building advocates or enemies
yeah,
as we send people on? And are we doing this in a way that's like, wow, that was really true to the vision the whole time? I
mhm,
could support that, right? Even the ones being fired. And we've seen so many great leaders do that type of shift. It's when a business model actually changes and these functions don't exist anymore, and there isn't a place that their skills belong with the organization. uh, those are
I'd
hard.
say it's, and I think this was part of the conversation, was simply we want folks to be in roles where they can be successful.
That's right.
And, there was a team within our organization where there wasn't going to be the opportunities for them to be successful any longer.
Yeah.
And that was a really tough pill for us to swallow.
It's heart wrenching, especially if you genuinely do care, which it's obvious that you do. Um, but to harden ourselves to that actually makes us a poorer leader. And so embrace that, feel it, go through it
Mhm.
with them, not just to them. Go with them through this process of change, and we can leave stronger on the other side. So thank you.
It was cool. We got to, we helped everyone that was affected to the extent we could find their next role.
Nice.
And I think it was that those types of actions where we were able to continue living our values, albeit, in a challenging
Yeah.
moment.
Those are the kinds of actions. It's only in those really hard times that we see are the values real or not. And that
Mhm.
your team can say, I can double down on my loyalty and efforts here, or should I hold back because I need a safety net somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Those are the moments of truth. And it sounds like your team faced them well. So thank you
I
for
mean,
sharing that.
of
Uh,
course.
that was the unsolicited nugget for all those listeners. I would just grab onto that and hear it. That will play out for you. If it hasn't yet, it will happen. And the way it happens helps to reveal what kind of leader you are and helps your team see, is this the team I can be all in on?
I mean, communication was never more important during that phase of our story or chapter,
Yeah.
particularly because I didn't have all the answers. There was a 8 or 12 week period where we knew we needed to make that decision, but I didn't necessarily have. We knew there was 4 or 5 scenarios that were going to play out. And we're fortunate today that one of the best case scenarios ended up coming to fruition. But the challenge was, over that 8 week period, I couldn't give people definitive guidance around this is what the next chapter is going to be,
Yeah.
because we need to see how a few things were going to shake out. And so communicating and explaining this is where we're at. These are what paths that we're contemplating, and this is how we're going to make a decision around which path that we pursue was really, really important,
Yeah.
in order to keep everyone from, I mean, myself included, from, being Friday and just, freaking out for the weekend and instead being able to relax and, come back ready to go on Monday.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, John, at this phase in your business, you're growing, you're learning, you're facing new challenges. You've overcome so many. What's something that maybe we could be of help as you take your next step in the journey of growth?
Yeah. I mean, I think, what's been exciting and awesome to this point is we have found such a great group of folks that we've brought into the team. And so I'm able to, stay in my lane and have, our management team handle what they need to be handling. And we've asked a lot of people in terms of evolving. They're subject matter experts in their domains, and we've asked them to take on more and get outside of their comfort zones. I think what'll be interesting and what we could probably use help and guidance as we navigate this next chapter is, um, we need to get back into growth mode and continue to evolve and build out new functions for our business. And, I think the challenge has always been, typically before we hire someone to do a job, it's either, it's someone from the management team who's doing that job first before we then hire someone to take that on. So that someone within our inner circle, or the leadership team, is they know exactly what needs to get done before we ask someone else to do that. And I think we're getting to a point now where we don't necessarily have the luxury of taking the time to, our management team is stretched thin as it is. So we
Yeah.
either need to grow the management team and have other folks with domain expertise that we bring in and just have implicit trust with to develop certain business functions, or we need to ask folks from our management team to give up some of what they're doing today and focus on the new things. And that's a delicate balance. I
Yeah.
think figuring out it's a case by case or a skill set by skill set decision that needs to get made. And um, figuring out which path to pursue as it relates to a variety of functional areas that we need to evolve in or across is going to be the challenge that we solve for over the next 4 to 6 months.
Um, let's let me understand. You say over the next 4 to 6 months. Can we just say a year out? Are you planning on being? And I don't mean revenues. Let's talk team size for a bit because SaaS could do some different things in a revenue play. But let's say in a team size, are you looking at doubling in the next year in team size?
If we, I am, I never like to count chickens before the eggs hatch, but if we can successfully execute on a few of the opportunities in front of us, um, we'll definitely be doubling in the next 12 months.
Okay. You said couple of months.
12 months.
12 months. Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that right. I was like, 2 months. Okay.
I knew
We've got the
better than,
fire is burning right now. All right. Uh, so 12 months, double in size. And this is your onshore team or an expansion of development and offshore, both.
it'll be both.
Okay. Um, then let's play with this a little bit and see what we can do. First, if we don't solve this well, what are the consequences? What happens? What's the cost to your business if we can't figure it out well on who needs to be where?
Yeah. I mean, I think um, poor outcomes or less than perfect outcomes for our customers, which is not acceptable in my mind. And ultimately, stressed out, burnt out folks on our team who we have a lot of great people who love raising their hand and are always willing to take on more.
Yeah,
Um, but I know that everyone has a breaking point, and I don't want to push any of our people to a breaking point, or a place where they're no longer, happy and excited to take on that extra work.
great. And does the VC firm own a majority or outside investors plus the VC firm, or are they a
No,
minority?
we're still majority owned by founders and employees.
Great. Then we don't have to worry about that one as much, but a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay, so uh, the the cash that you gained in your round can disappear through these wrong hires like it could all be gone and you'd be like, oh boy, we're bootstrapping now with someone else sitting on our cap table, but
Quickly.
bootstrapping again, right? It just like flips it all upside down. It's a costly thing. If we can solve this and solve it well, it allows you to grow and expand um, infinitely, as much as the market can bear, right? However big your addressable market is, your what are they, just the TAM. So
Yeah.
that that's impressive. That's a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth if we can figure this out. Here's what tools do you use today to project and say this is what we have to look like, we think, and what roles that we need to fill, and whether or not it is managers handoff or we just need to bring in a new ones. Do you already have a methodology you use or kind of a rule of
Yeah.
thumb?
I mean, in terms of frameworks,
Hmm.
we like to kind of paint a realistic picture of where we want to be and then work our way backwards in terms of what are the steps that we need to take to get there, and then
Good,
recognize what are the resources that we need to execute on those individual steps. So that allows us to take a very lofty idea that is at least 12 months away and break it down into digestible milestones that we can focus on,
perfect.
month by month or week by week. Um, and a lot of it is, input that I demand of our leadership team. I need them to
They have to make the decisions versus
ideas and
yeah,
insights on what needs to get done in order for us to do this stuff.
great. Um, and that would be specifically if they were in the realms that they already manage and lead. But if you're building out and spinning off a brand new department offering service, whatever that's different,
Mhm.
then that's probably more of a collaborative one, or just you hand it still to those leaders. It's kind of in their lane. They still have to decide.
It's definitely collaborative. Again, the hiring conversation is definitely a $10,000 decision. And
Yes,
so I like to get the feedback, talk through the feedback, question the feedback and insight and input, and then let them run.
great.
So it's really just a matter of you know, fully breaking down and understanding why we're, coming to the conclusions that we're coming to.
How often do you paint that picture of the future state of your business and then work back to? How often do you repaint that?
It depends. Right now, I think we've done it on a much more frequent basis over the last 6 months relative to maybe the 6 months before that. And I think it's a matter of, you know, how much opportunity is there in front of us. If we close a major deal, we kind of know what we need to do for the next few months. I don't need to go close a second major deal and, bite off more than our organization can chew. So it's kind of a function where it could be monthly or it could be quarterly, or it could be a couple times every month, depending on, different things or factors that come into play.
Great. Do you have a master one that sort of informs all of them? So a our dream 5 years down the road is to be a $500 million organization, $500 million business, having this kind of impact out there. And to do that, we imagine today, and you won't end up being this, but we imagine today this is the future state. Here's how we would think we would need to be organized to pull that off.
I've always prided myself on maintaining quite a bit of optionality in our business in terms of how we grow.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I'm, for lack of a better word, overly pragmatic and know better than to just say we want to be a $500 million business in 5 years, and here's the path we're going to pursue to get there. Simply because that path to date over the last 5 years has taken a lot of twists and turns, and I expect there's still to be a few more twists and turns for us to navigate, and frankly, opportunities that we haven't yet uncovered. I feel like if you just define a vision and stick to that vision and close your eyes to other opportunities, ultimately, um, the vision of what we've built and where we're at today is not extremely dissimilar from what we had set out to do when we got started. With that said, we found opportunities to capture market or close deals or work with different clients that we would never have envisioned or imagined 5 years ago. So I like to keep my eyes wide open and be opportunistic as, we uncover things that we weren't aware of, at the get-go.
Okay. I'm going to push on your pragmatic side just a little bit.
Please.
And this is one of the keys in the growth that you're going to do over the next little while. Uh, well, first, I love that you're painting these pictures every couple of months, every month, sometimes twice a month. Like, no, what will we have to look like? Here's a shift. Where are we going? And staying nimble but clear. The clear picture allows the rest of the team to act in unison for that month or two,
Hmm.
right? And where they're going and how and where resources will be prioritized. Such a valuable tool. We call it a future org chart, where we actually lay out this is how we're going to have to be structured to pull this off in this
Done
time
that a
period,
few.
right? And
Yep.
and every single year we've got what we think it's going to be given the opportunities, and they're shifting and adjusting until we get wherever we're getting to. But to have a blueprint matters when you're building a house, or you get this terrible conglomeration of things that just don't come together right.
Yeah.
So these blueprints are fantastic. um, but I need to free you up to start making $100,000 decisions instead of 10,000 with the team.
Hmm.
And there are pieces of you that do think much further, and that say, of all the opportunities, I'm saying no to this one, and this one, but this one I'm saying yes to.
Yep.
And there's a reason you're saying yes to that one and no to the other ones.
Hmm.
That much of a reason, that's where this 3, 4, 5 year kind of vision starts to come into play. It
Yep.
doesn't need to be polished because it's ridiculous to polish it at that level,
Of
right?
course.
We don't need the details built out, but we do need to know what North Star is and maybe what the next biggest mountain we want to climb. I have no idea what exact route we're going to take yet. We're going to figure that out given our
Yeah.
resources. But That piece, if that's clear enough, for instance, if you were going down that route and you have this belief that, and the way you're talking to me is, um, we will be our own VAR today, our own enterprise software, and our own value added reseller. We're
Mhm.
all in house owned so that we can do customized work and really make this shine for every major client that we bring on and do business with. Fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so that we're seeing that, which also means, oh, we're going to, in the future, still, at least 5 years, we believe this is a guiding principle. We're going to need a really great dev team that can own a product that they want to have untouched,
Hmm.
but fully connectable, right? So that my VARs can bring in anything and everything and do all the work they're going to do. But I'm going to need this fantastic product team that's so good at saying, no, we're not building that into the core. They
Yeah.
know what to shoot over to the consultative group that's the value added reseller. And they have their own application engineers and everyone who's writing all the bridges and all that kind of jazz. Fair?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we can see we're going to need this organization up there doing these things. And we probably aren't happy because you just told me you want to double in size just on staff, which means your revenues, because you have a product side and of your revenues are going to more than double through
Hmm.
that process. Uh, so we can already kind of see you want a lot of growth. You know you want to be a lot bigger. How much bigger, and what areas are set and solid, at least in your mind, for how you want to play. Would you vary from those very much in that 5 years?
No, I think that is, from a general structure, very much how we think about things. It's, where those clients are coming from and what the product roadmap looks like, perhaps where there's variability, but in terms of functional capabilities, that's accurate.
Great. If we can at least hold that level and a rough size that we think we want to strive for, so
Hmm.
that everyone's like, I see enough opportunity in this and I can draw in the right players that
Yeah.
want to go after this. If we can get that vision big enough, which you had to have for your VCs to care about you,
Hmm.
um, enough of that so that these pivoting pictures of the future don't pivot away from the core direction. When that
Yep.
gets clearer in the minds, it'll do a couple things for us. One, it will help our team make better and faster decisions. But as you bring people in from the outside, which you're going to have to continue to do, or you're going to have the best development program inside, which you could do and probably would win if you did. How do we
Hmm.
bring people up through those ranks? But sometimes when you go really fast, we need that clarity so that these people who come in aren't rock stars in their space and pull us to where really you become a VAR that has a side software business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Could really just flip the model like, no, you were trying to win in your place, but really you're the tail, not the dog, right? We
Hmm.
have a strategic focus. We enter in here, and that everybody stays aligned so we don't pull the company in different directions. Uh,
Absolutely.
so that could be helpful on part of that. And the other piece, and I was thinking about, I mean, the core question came to, do I get my current leadership team to learn and do the work before we add somebody in to take over that? Or do we just bring someone in to take over that work? Uh,
Hmm.
here are a couple of thoughts, and neither of these are good. They're fine. Like, I'm not going to say these are winner ideas, but
Hmm.
one of them is, uh, hire people to solve a problem, not to run a department or to do a job. So if you have to hire somebody who's not one of the current leaders, because really what you're saying is, I have my current leaders go solve the problem, figure out the job, develop someone into it, and then take it over and move on
Yeah.
to the next thing. Really, you're just hiring your current leaders to solve a problem. Great, that's why we have them. So if we're going to have to hire from outside, let's just hire someone who can solve a problem and make that
Yeah.
the main draw, right?
Yeah. That's a good way to, I think the struggle is simply, and this is probably more of a me problem, but um, it's always hard to ask someone to do something without necessarily knowing what the right outcome looks like.
Mhm. And yet you know the outcome that's needed.
Uh, yes,
But we
albeit
we don't know how they're going to do it.
I
We
think
don't know the
I
metrics
think
of success along the way.
I think that's the challenge. Is I don't even necessarily know how to measure what success looks like sometimes.
That is the challenge. And so I love the approach of how do I use my current team to solve? If they're solving a problem they're not great at and you have to move fast, I suggest you build a team of outside professionals that help them solve the problem. They're not part of the team long term. They've already
Yeah.
solved that problem for other businesses. They become mentors, coaches, whatever they are, fractional for that moment. Get
Yep.
in, help us build this, help us do it. Invest heavy in that. Let a current core team member be the core, the person solving, and you're
Hmm.
building them, and then they can build a team behind them. I think that's fine. But
Yep.
it goes a lot slower if you're taking someone who's good at solving A and then have them go and solve B. Sometimes is a stretch. So you just have to
Yeah.
think through
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Makes
But
sense.
I,
We do have. Oh, go ahead.
I love that you're looking at, and I can feel you. Like, I would rather not have to hire a bunch of people to plug in. I'd like my team to grow through and build this.
Mhm.
The if you were VC majority owned, they would push you hard to hire outside experts to come in now. And it's
Yeah.
one of the biggest downfalls I've seen for companies at your stage. And what it is instead of building the capability of how to develop and build your own leaders fast enough, and build new leaders behind them fast enough. If you don't build this and you instead plug in from the outside, what happens is all of those core values, shared beliefs, the things that drive how you make decisions get watered down, get bruised, get thrown aside, and you'll
Mhm.
see your company being pulled apart.
Yep.
And so I love the direction that you're thinking about of growing your own. And now it's how fast do I grow a leader that supplants the current one in their space? So for
Mhm.
them to solve A over here, they have to have two more people ready to fill their role. Then they're ready.
100%.
And that would be my main focus right now for your growth would be then have each leader build a bench strength. Who can fill their roles today and show me that they can, that they're already taking over. I'm handing them more stuff. As soon as I have where I can say, yep, either of these two could fill it, I can go anywhere the company needs me to. And we need every one of your leaders doing that. And then those under them have the same job. I have to be
Yep.
building people. And just think of it down through the faster you can build leaders now, the more you keep your identity and the faster you grow in the long term.
Yeah. I think cultivating leaders from within is
Mm-hmm.
a
That's the big key.
irreplaceable measure of success in terms of longevity and maintaining company values.
And how many of your team members have it as one of their key KPIs is the number of leaders they've built under them?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that
We just haven't,
well,
right? We don't
we've
think
taken
about it yet.
we've taken for granted that we've been able to source a lot of great folks who have stepped up.
That's right. So anyway, that would be my thought at this point. The other direction again, was the bring those outside help and resources to think through.
Yeah, I
Um,
think there's specialized areas where someone already has a playbook that probably works.
yep, yep. We're gonna pull them in temporarily.
Yep.
They advise the person who holds the kind of soul, the culture of the business. They're not the decision maker; they're the advice, and then the decision maker can run with it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I know we just took a very hard topic and we beat it up from different angles, and maybe the listeners are like, David, I couldn't even follow this, and I apologize for that. But if you got some value out of this,
This was
uh,
great. I really appreciate you.
that's what I needed out of it. Uh, John, how do people get in touch with you if they feel
Uh,
like I should be working with you, or maybe I know someone who needs your software?
yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me. My email is john@vero-technologies.com.
Fantastic. Thank you again. That wraps up this episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. For those who are listening, if you found value, again, that's at this stage of a business where you got 30 some odd people spread out there doing work for you. you found value on how to build those leaders and key work to keep your company alive and growing well, then like and share, do what's necessary to get to other seven-figure business owners. Until next time, keep striving, keep learning, keep growing, and keep caring.